All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about how one guy, starting with basically nothing, built a $5 billion empire. Oh, and he did it by the time he was 36.
Okay, so let's start with that number, because it's one that just really grabs you. $5 billion. And get this, we're not talking about some old money inherited company. Nope, this is the current value of one single entrepreneur's projects and assets built from the ground up.
But here's the part that's really going to blow your mind. The age of the guy who built all of this.
36. So the big question is, how on earth did Saurav Siddiqui pull this off? How do you build a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate before you even hit 40? Well, his story, it's something else.
All right, let's get into how this all started. And his journey didn't begin with a giant trust fund or some lucky investment. It actually started with a huge family argument and a really bold decision.
So you can see right here, he jumped into the business world fast. I mean, managing a 600-person company when you're just 20 years old, that's intense. But the real turning point, the moment that changed everything, came when he was 21. There was a big fight over profits, and he just walked away. Left with literally nothing but his car and a laptop, totally determined to prove he could make it on his own.
And that right there, that's the whole key. For him, this wasn't some crushing defeat. It was the ultimate test. He proved to himself that his own ambition and his ability to just get things done were all he really needed. Within a single day, he'd found a place to live and had already earned $10,000. That sealed the deal. He was on his own.
Okay, so how do you go from that one dramatic moment to building a global empire? It wasn't luck, and it definitely wasn't random. He actually developed a very specific philosophy for growth, which we're going to call the Siddiqui method.
He basically boiled down his entire success into 3 core rules. First, he says ideas are everywhere, but people who can actually execute on them, that's rare. So, second, you find good people, and third, you train them like crazy, and then you trust them to run the show. That frees him up to climb to that next level, to tackle the next big thing.
Now his hiring process, it's really something else. He's a huge believer that you can train pretty much anyone to be a boss, but you can't teach them to be a good person. So his team literally watches candidates from the second they walk through the door. They pay close attention to how they treat the receptionist, the staff, everyone. To Siddiqui, that tells you way more about a person's character than any fancy resume ever could.
So once he had this method down and his businesses were booming, he could have just kicked back, right? But instead, he turned his focus to a problem way, way bigger than just making more money. He started looking at the future of his home country, Bangladesh.
And this wasn't just him spotting a new market to get into. This was a full-blown national crisis that he felt he had to do something about. I mean, he saw his country literally choking on its own garbage. We're talking open landfills causing widespread disease and pollution on a massive, massive scale.
And you can really see his forward-thinking approach in the kind of technology he chose to tackle this. He could have gone with standard incineration, but that stuff is known for pumping out harmful emissions. Instead, he went for this revolutionary clean technology called synthesis gasification. It basically heats waste in a completely closed chamber to create clean energy, with, get this, 0 harmful byproducts.
And the commitment he made to this, it's just mind-boggling. He managed to secure $4.2 billion in investment to bring this clean tech to Bangladesh. And that's just the start. The full project is going to eventually need something like 20 power plants just to handle all the country's waste.
But his vision doesn't even stop with waste. This massive project, when you combine it with his other big investments in solar and wind power, is set to supply over 700 megawatts of clean energy to the national grid. That's enough to power millions of homes and will totally transform the country's entire energy landscape. It's a real game changer.
So, you might be thinking, okay, what's the financial play here? But when people ask him that, his answer is pretty clear. He says he's already made enough money to live comfortably for the next 50 years without lifting a finger. This project, this is about something else entirely. This is about his why.
And right there, that's his mission. It's not just about building another company. It's about building a legacy. He doesn't want to be remembered for the billions he made. He wants his company to be known as the one that cleaned up an entire nation for generations to come.
Saurav Siddiqui's story really leaves us with a pretty powerful question, doesn't it? It's not just for entrepreneurs. It's for all of us. Once you have what you need, what problem out there is actually worth solving?
His journey really shows that sometimes the biggest impact you can have comes from taking on the challenges that everyone else thinks are impossible. And that, well, that's definitely something to think about.